Hey, what's up guys? In this video we'll be doing advanced color grading techniques like a pro. Let's go! So welcome back to the channel guys. As always, for those who'd like the raw files used in this project, just hit my DM and I'll send them to you via email. Okay, so for this composition we are going to do color grading. So this means I've already compiled all the assets and cropped out, done the dodge and burn, frequency separation. Okay, so first thing first, I'm going to unhide all the elements going into the composition. So that's the adjustments done on the sky. So these are the adjustments I did to the land. You'll see a lot of curves in my composition. That's what I use for the brightness and contrast. Others prefer levels, others prefer brightness and contrast, but for this case I'll use all of them, all the three: levels, curves, brightness and contrast. Depends on the type of component you're editing. So as we move further in the video I'll explain. So this the lady already cropped out. That's the before, that's after cropping. So I'll unhide the adjustments on the lady. Yes, so that's the learn. I really do hope that for the beginners who've been watching my videos, I hope you've been using these techniques, because compositions sometimes take a while to edit, but just make sure you always do the color grading after the whole process. It counts. It makes a huge impact, so you can always count on it. So this the hair layer, or rather the mane. So as you can see, I cropped it from, it's a wig, I just cropped out the face. I just cropped out the face, then did lots of cloning and duplicating. It took a while, but the results were worth it. So so that's the hair layer. I grouped it, then did overall adjustments to affect all of them, and also save on time. So we'll jump to the next layer, which is the curb. So that's the lioness. As you can see, she's not as clear compared to other layers. That's because I added a blur to it, since she's farther from, compared to the other layers, she's quite far, so naturally she'll be blurred. So I added a bit of blur. Then I'll unhide the layers on the lioness. Next we'll do the spray. So for these white objects, I use levels instead of curves. So for this spray, you can see I added shadows using curves. Also for this, since it's white, I use curves. Yeah. So I use levels on light objects or white objects, and curves on dark objects. So this is the mirror. Last but not least, I'll unhide its layers. Then lastly, we have the text layer, which you won't need for this tutorial, so I'll just unhide it. So I'll skip to the background layer, then click, I'll edit the sky. I think we forgot to unhide the shadows, so I'll just unhide all of them. And I always use, okay, not always, but I mostly use multiplies, the blending mode for shadows. Yeah, so I think that's it. That's the composition without color grading. Okay, so for the sky, what I'm going to do is I'll create a adjustment layer, which is the gradient map. So for this project, I'm going to show you the three techniques, not three, but the techniques I mostly use for color grading. So that's the gradient map. Ensure it's clipped to the sky. Then click on the gradient, which by default it's black to white, white to black. Then I'll select the colors I want to use. So for this project, it's going to be brown. I don't know, it's brown cream, but something closer to the ground. Then change the blending mode from normal to color. So what I want to do is add a little bit of brown to the horizon on the sky layer. So I'll click on the layer mask, brush tool selected, ensure the brush is the soft brush. Yeah, opacity at 100%. Then since we want to hide or erase, ensure black is the foreground color, so press X. On layer masks, always remember black conceals or erases, then white reveals. So since we want to hide the top part of the sky, the brown effect on the sky will ensure black is the foreground color. Okay, so I'll just increase the brush size, ensure the layer mask is selected. Then I'll just increase the brush size. Then brush over the top to conceal. Yeah, so that looks good for now. That looks good. So we'll just add a new adjustments layer. So add a hue and saturation layer. Always ensure it's clipped. So I want to change the blue area. So select the color picker, click on the icon, then choose the area I want to adjust. So as you can see, it's cyan. Then adjust the hue. I'll increase the lightness slightly. So far I've used two techniques. I've used gradient map and hue and saturation for color matching. So I play around with the hue. so that looks good. Next will be the land layer. So I added a new hue and saturation. It had reds. It had lots of red, so I increased the hue to the right. Then I'm playing around with the saturation. So if you want to confirm the saturation on your layers, just add a new curves on top of all the layers, not curves, I mean solid color. Then choose a gray color, then change the blending mode from normal. So if you want to check the contrast of or brightness, change to color blending mode. As you can see, all my layers are aligned. So for example, I've clicked the mirror layer. If I increase the curves, you'll see it reveals the new layer we just created, reveals the amount. So you can use this to maybe do some quality control. Yeah, so since we are doing the color grading, we will change the blending mode from color to luminosity to reveal the saturation. So as you can see, all my layers except the spray, the top, the red part, we'll adjust that later. So everything looks good, so we'll just adjust the land layer slightly. I'll increase the saturation slightly. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so for the next layer, which is the lady, I'll show you the that technique. So instead of using the gradient map, what I'm going to do is match the lady to the ground, the brown shade. So what I'll do, I'll click on the ground layer, then while pressing Alt, drag the duplicate on top of all the lady layers. Yeah, so I'll increase its size to ensure it covers the whole lady. For those who might be wondering, Alt duplicates of others like to use Control J, so works the same. So I'll increase the size until the whole lady layer is covered. Then go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, around 250 and 300 works for this technique. As you can see on the background, it already looks like a gradient, so you can either use gradient map or this technique. Okay, so click between the two layers, or alt click to clip it to the land, then change the blending mode to color, then play around with the opacity. Yeah, so as you can see, the more I increase, the more browns are added on the lady. So I'll just play around until I get what I want. You just don't want to overdo it. Okay, so I'll add a new adjustments layer, which is hue and saturation, then play around with the saturation. Yeah, the lady's face looks a lot red, so we'll just confirm. Yeah, so I'll just decrease the saturation, then I'll add the yellow. So when you slide to the right, that's the yellow. So we'll repeat the same techniques on all the remaining layers. So I'll alt drag the color matching layer on top of the next. So I'll clip it. So this is the lion layer. So we'll add a new hue and saturation. I'll increase the saturation slightly. Around that point works. So I'll just unhide the solid color layer, then go back to the lion's layers. I'll drag the ground layer on top of the I believe this the lion's mane. So I'll play around and try to clip to the mane, then play around with the opacity. Always ensure it's clipped, then we'll add a saturation layer below it. So for beginners, this process might take a while, so it's always good to take a break from your project. So yeah, so it's always good to take even, let's say, a 30-minute break, then come back and you'll see all the flaws. But just ensure you always do the color grading after compiling all the elements into a composition. Just ensure you always do the color grading. Yeah, so we are on the curb layer, just playing around with the saturation. So yeah, we added blur on the lioness since she's far compared to the other layers. So I added some Gaussian blur on the lioness layer. But we'll still have to do color grading. We don't spare anything, guys. So always ensure it's clipped, then we'll add a new hue and saturation layer. It's always in the details, guys. It's always in the details. Yeah, so Control J, just confirming. Looks good. So Control J to duplicate, or just simply Alt, then drag on top of the other layer. Clip it. I believe this is the spray, yeah, the spray bottle. So I play around with the opacity. So the lid is the one that was standing out from the rest, so we are going to work on it. Yeah, so as you can see, the top part is quite off compared to the other layers. So that's the reds. So I'm going to reduce the saturation. As you can see, yeah, it's now color matching. So I'll just add it slightly. Then switch to master. Then yeah, I think that looks good, better than before. I know most people prefer manipulating using Photoshop, then color grading using Lightroom, but all the tools are still in Photoshop, so I don't see the reason. To me, I don't see the reason for using Lightroom. All the tools are in Photoshop, so yeah, still looks the same for me. I guess you're on the mirror layer, so ensure it's clipped. Since the mirror is white, there is no need for adding a hue and saturation layer. Yeah. So contrast is on point, saturation is on point. Good. So we'll do the final color grading, which most people prefer using Lightroom. So Control Shift Alt E to take a snapshot of all the layers. I converted it to a smart filter. So this is just to you convert to smart filters whenever you want to make adjustments afterwards. So Control Shift Alt E to take a snapshot of all the layers. Then we are going to do an overall color grading to give a uniform look. So I went to filter, camera raw filter. Yeah, so just wait for it to load, then we'll do the final edits. So I'll start with the basics. So click the basics, then increase the yellows. So for this camera raw filters, everything we do here will be very minimal since the image already looks good. So what we are doing is just adding some final touches. So anything on these edits are going to be very minimal. So just play around with the contrast, the temperature, the haze. So texture, clarity, the haze, don't overdo it. I'll skip all the way to so texture, clarity. Yeah, so this is the before and this is the after. So on the right is what you're working on. So as you can see on the left, the image already looks good after we've done the color grading, but It will look better after these camera raw filters. Okay, so I'll jump to saturation, increase it slightly. So what I normally do is increase the saturation, then reduce the vibrance. Okay, so I'll go to detail, increase the sharpness and increase noise reduction ever so slightly. Good. So we'll go to I'll adjust the science. So as you can see on the right, very minimal edits, but it makes the image more vibrant, more colorful, and definitely more attention grabbing compared to the left, although the left one still looks good. So on to the color grading, which is the final edit. So the highlights, I don't want them to be totally white, so I'll make them yellow. So play around with the wheels, color wheels. You just don't want to overdo it, so don't slide it all the way out. Ensure it's closer to the middle than the edges. Shadows and midtones as well. So for the shadows, I don't want them totally black, so there'll be a bit of yellow, red shades on it. So play around with the slider. Midtones as well, some yellow shades. Yeah, so you can compare the two images. Both look good, but the right looks better in my opinion. And yeah, that's how I did my project. You can press OK. And we are done with the project. That's the I'm going to do before. That's the before, that's the after. I can go ahead and add the text. So guys, that's how I came up with this badass composition. I hope you've enjoyed it. In case of any questions on the techniques I use, just let me know. So see you in the next video. Peace.